Jacob enters the toilet and checks if someone is in. No one is there, so this is his chance to install the cameras. He quickly sets up the cameras and leaves the bathroom. What could Jacob be hoping to gain from this? Is he trying to catch someone in the act of doing something illegal? Is he trying to spy on someone in particular? Is he trying to protect the bathroom from potential intruders? Or is he simply trying to monitor the bathroom for safety reasons? Whatever his motive, it's clear that Jacob is up to something. Could this be part of Eric's job as an undercover agent? Is he trying to catch a criminal in the act? Or is he trying to protect the bathroom from potential intruders? After installing the camera in the bathroom, Jacob decides to take a break. He wasn't expecting any activity in the bathroom so soon anyway. Then after his break, he turns on the computer and he sees the mystery woman. He's confused. He wasn't sure who she was or what she was doing there. He wonders if she was a customer or an employee and why she was in the bathroom. Then suddenly he saw the woman do something odd. Jacob leaned in for a closer look. He was not surprised for what he was about to witness. He turned pale when he saw what she did. What was she doing? Was she transforming into something else? Was she involved in an illicit affair? Or was she committing an illegal activity? He had to find out. He had to know the truth. He felt his heart beating in his chest. This was way worse than he had ever imagined. He should have never hung up that camera. Jacob was starting to regret his decision to install the surveillance camera. He had thought it would be a good idea to keep an eye on things, but now he was feeling uneasy. The woman in the footage was obviously doing something very suspicious, and she wasn't alone. If she and her accomplices would ever find out Jacob had videotaped them without them knowing, he would be done for. Jacob knew he had to act fast and get out of there before it was too late. He had to find a way to protect himself. He was determined to find out. Jacob was determined to stay focused and alert. He had to be prepared for anything. He checked his equipment and made sure he had all the necessary tools to protect himself. He was ready to take action if needed. But what was the woman doing in the bathroom? Why did it frighten Jacob so much? And who was helping her? To really understand what happened, we need to tell you a bit of backstory. Jacob worked as a janitor. First, he cleaned in a big corporate building, which was great. He was able to interact with people from all walks of life and learn about different cultures. Every day, he would sweep and mop the floors, empty the trash cans, and clean the bathrooms. He also had to make sure the building was secure and that all the doors were locked. In addition, he had to check the fire extinguishers and make sure they were in working order. He also had to make sure the building was properly ventilated and that the air conditioning was working properly. Jacob also had to make sure the building was properly lit and that all the lights were working. Finally, he had to make sure the building was free of pests and that all the windows and doors were properly sealed. Jacob enjoyed his job and was proud of the work he did every day. But out of nowhere, without even discussing it with Jacob, the company he worked for suddenly transferred him to another building. Jacob was taken aback by the sudden change and felt confused about why he was being transferred. He had been working at the same company for years and had never been moved before. He was unsure of what to expect in his new environment and was anxious about the transition. He had grown accustomed to the people he worked with and the routine he had established. He was worried that he wouldn't be able to fit in at the new location. He wondered why they had chosen him out of all the janitors. Jacob was feeling a bit overwhelmed and disappointed by the sudden change. He just hoped that he would be able to adjust and make the best of the situation. Every time he asked Ho's boss about it, they gave him a vague answer. He tried to get answers from his boss, but to no avail. His boss would often give him a dismissive answer or simply ignore him. Jacob was determined to get to the bottom of the situation, but his boss seemed intent on keeping him in the dark. After a few weeks of working at his new building, Jacob noticed strange things started to happen. At first, Jacob tried to ignore it. He figured there would probably be a reasonable explanation for it. But as time went on, he started to feel uneasy. People seemed to be whispering in the hallways and avoiding eye contact. He felt like he was being watched. He started to miss his old job and the people he used to work with. He wished he could go back, but he knew he had no choice but to stay here. He knew he had to figure out what was causing these strange occurrences. He began to ask questions, research, and look for clues. He was determined to get to the bottom of the mystery. His first idea was to start some research. Who has the janitor before him? After all, wasn't Jacob transferred so suddenly because someone had to be replaced? He decided to start by asking around the building, but no one seemed to know anything. He then decided to look through the building's records, but they were all strangely missing. He was starting to get frustrated, but he was determined to find out what happened. He decided to look through the janitor's locker, but it was empty. He then decided to look through the security footage, but it had been wiped clean. What made the janitor before he leave? Or why was the company so unsatisfied with this janitor? The night shifts made Jacob realize something odd was going on. First of all, people would come in far past office hours without saying a word to Jacob. They would just walk in and then disappear into the back offices. They also seemed to be always in a hurry, and they were always whispering to each other. Plus, they would often leave the building in groups, and they would never look at Jacob when they passed him. The staff seemed to be avoiding him, and they would never answer his questions. Jacob was determined to find out why. He asked around, but no one seemed to know why the janitor before him had been replaced. He decided to take matters into his own hands and investigate further. He asked the manager, but he was tight-lipped. He asked the other staff members, but they all had the same response. Jacob was determined to get to the bottom of this mystery. He started to look through the janitor's old records and found some discrepancies. He was also becoming disappointed that the staff had been so unwelcoming. He had to find out what janitor was covering the night shift before him. He started by looking into the janitor's past, trying to find out if there was any connection between him and the company. He also looked into the company's records, trying to find out if there was any suspicious activity that could have led to the janitor's dismissal. Jacob also looked into the janitor's financial records, trying to see if there was any evidence of bribery or corruption. He also looked into the janitor's personal life, trying to find out if there was any connection between him and the company. Finally, Jacob looked into the janitor's work history, trying to see if there was any evidence of negligence or incompetence. By doing all of this, Jacob was able to piece together the puzzle and find out the truth behind the janitor's dismissal. This is what makes a good investigation: thorough research, attention to detail, and a willingness to go the extra mile. He discovered that the building had been the site of a series of strange disappearances, and some of the staff had been involved in suspicious activities. Jacob was determined to find out the truth. Jacob found an article online. It was about the disappearance of a man known as a loyal janitor and just days away from retiring. Jacob was intrigued and decided to investigate further. He searched deep in the internet and eventually found out that the janitor had been fired only recently and was immediately replaced by him. The article further states that they were able to talk to the janitor in person. This was the first important clue that Jacob had found. This was the breakthrough that Jacob had been looking for. He wondered whether he shouldn't just keep doing his job and consider his former suspicions as nonsense. He was wrong to feel this way, and the upcoming night shift would prove to him why. Jacob was listening to some music, as the night shift per usual bored him. Yet despite his music, he heard a loud scream coming from the bathrooms. He lowered his music but didn't hear anything. He thought he must have been imagining things, but then he heard a loud thud coming from the storage room. He quickly turned off his music and listened carefully. He heard a strange scratching sound coming from the walls. He was sure he was in danger. He slowly got up from his chair and tiptoed towards the sound. He heard voices, but he couldn't make out what they were saying. He started to worry that someone was in the building and he was in danger. He heard a door slam shut, and he waited for a few minutes before he dared to move. He cautiously looked around the corner and saw a figure running away. He was so confused about what was going on. Should he stay in the safety of his room, or should he check out what was going on outside? Jacob sprinted down there, determined to find out what was happening on his watch. But when he reached the bathroom door, a large man was guarding the door, telling him everything was fine right away. Jacob was taken aback, but he was determined to find out what was going on. He asked the man who he was and why he was guarding the door. The man only stared him down. When he spoke, he only told Jacob to leave and mind his own business. The unknown man's presence surprised Jacob, causing him to stay silent and walk back up the stairs. But a question was nagging at the back of his mind. What if someone needed help? Then Jacob did something that will alter everything. Instead of locking himself in the janitor's office, Jacob decided to hide and figure things out. Jacob hid underneath the staircase to see who came out of the bathroom. Then, Jacob saw a woman leave the bathroom. It was the woman who'd appear on the camera later. What was she doing in the bathroom? Why was the man guarding her? He noticed her eyes were red and puffy, as if she had been crying. He wondered if she was the one in the video and if she needed help. Jacob quickly took a picture of them before running back to his desk. He was curious to know who the woman was and why she was being guarded. Jacob felt like he had no choice but to contact the former janitor, who clearly knew more about this. He was hoping that the janitor would be willing to hear him out and help him solve the mystery. He looked in the article on how to reach him, and soon found out in what hotel he was staying. The janitor wasn't too eager to help right away. He suspected that Jacob was just another journalist looking for sensation, or even worse, someone who was part of the organization. But Jacob was determined to find out the truth. He tried to explain his motives, but the janitor was still suspicious. He asked Jacob why he was so interested in the organization and what he was hoping to find out. Jacob was honest and explained that he wanted to uncover the truth and help the janitor and the other workers. But Jacob was determined to find out the truth. Eventually persuaded the old janitor to meet up the next day. Jacob and the former janitor finally met. They sat in silence for a while, but the man eventually turned to Jacob and said, "Tell me everything you know and I'll do the same." Jacob was taken aback by the offer, unsure of what the man wanted from him. Jacob looked at the man and told him everything that had happened for the past few weeks. The man nodded and listened to the whole story before giving Jacob some strange advice. Then he gave Jacob the advice. "You have to hang up camera in there," he said. But Jacob wasn't so sure about that idea. He had only met this man and wasn't sure if he could be trusted in his opinion. He set up the camera and waited for something to happen. Sure enough, he soon had the evidence he needed to solve the mystery. He asked the janitor why he wanted to do this, and the janitor simply said that he wanted to find out the truth himself. It did cost him his job, after all. He was even willing to buy the cameras for him. Jacob eventually felt like he had no other choice but to accept. As soon as his shift started, Jacob was on edge. Tonight was the night. He had brought a small camera with him, the one that the former janitor bought for him, and planned on hanging it up in the bathroom. After a few minutes of careful planning, Jacob was finally ready to put up the camera. After much preparation, he felt like he was ready. He took a deep breath and slowly started to hang the camera up. He was relieved when he was done, and the camera was securely in place. He had done it. He had successfully put up the camera without anyone noticing. That night, as soon as he got home, Jacob opened his laptop and watched back the footage. His eyes widened as he watched a woman enter the bathroom. She was wearing a hoodie and had her face covered. She was carrying a bag and seemed to be looking for something. She climbed onto a toilet and moved a ceiling panel to the side. Then she grabbed a little bag from the ceiling and placed some dollar bills in its place. She quickly put the panel back and hopped off the toilet. Jacob watched as she left the room with the bag in her hand. He was sure she had just stolen something. He rewound the footage and watched it again. This time he noticed that she had a key in her hand. She had used it to unlock the door to the room. He also noticed that she had a small flashlight in her pocket. She had used it to find the panel in the ceiling. He was sure she had done this before. Jacob watched as she made her way out of the building. He followed her on the camera until she disappeared from view. He was sure she was up to no good. Jacob knew he had to call the police. He provided them with the truth and was rewarded for his bravery. The police started an investigation and found out there was a big drug business inside the building. They used the security footage as evidence and were able to arrest the criminals. Jacob was relieved that justice was served and the truth was revealed. He was even more relieved that the people living in the building were now safe. The police thanked Jacob for his help, and the mayor even gave him a medal for his courage. Everyone involved was arrested, and Jacob was moved back to his old building. He was given a promotion and a raise for his efforts. He was also given a certificate of appreciation from the mayor. Jacob was overwhelmed with joy and thanked everyone for their support. He was also given a special award from the police department for his bravery. He was also given a special dinner with the mayor and the police chief. Jacob was also given a special gift from the community. He was also given a special plaque from the police department for his courage and dedication. Jacob was truly humbled by the recognition and thanked everyone for their kindness. Of course, he didn't forget about the former janitor, as it was through his help that this all came to have a good ending.